Aloha, everyone. How are you guys doing? I said I was going to be going live at 3:30. Oh man, I'm early. That happens. So I know that there's going to be a whole bunch of people logging in, and just wanted to say hi to everyone. Nice little shout out here from Southern California. I just got back from Hawaii. Got to hang out with my daughter. She turned 11. Can't believe it. She turned 11 on Monday. And absolutely incredible time with her. Trish and I took her to Honolulu. And for those of you that are parents, you know, you can give them some cool gifts. You can give them some, fun presents and whatnot. And I think it's experiences. It's experiences that are so powerful. Fra from Brazil. How's it going, man? John, good to see you on here. So nice to have you guys on here live with me. And I got some cool stuff to talk about today. Got some really neat things, so I want to jump right in. Spend about 10-15 minutes just talking about how to hack your own mind. I keep getting that question all the time. How do you hack your own mind? I mean, first of all, NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, something that I began to study back when I was 11 years old. Became a master practitioner at 15. I think one of the original ways of being able to hack your mind is neuro-linguistic programming. Philosophy talked about how the mind works. Psychology looks at how the mind works. I'm talking about getting in there and changing what's going on at the deeper level. It is possible. It's absolutely possible. You got to think about the most successful people on the planet and how they're able to break out of old patterns, old ways of looking at things, and be able to achieve some of the most incredible things that you could possibly achieve. Whether it's on the physical level, I've gotten to work with professional athletes who break the barriers that they thought were previously there. People who transcend the concepts of technology and learn how to connect people up. Like the guy who created this whole Facebook thing, Mark Zuckerberg. You look at that. Musk with the electric vehicle. You can't do it. There's no way. Steve Jobs with Apple. I mean, these people sat there and they went, I'm not going to conform to these concepts or ideas that other people are putting out onto me. I'm not going to conform with other ways of thinking. I'm not going to let other people's limitations become my reality. I want you guys to think about that for a moment. The biggest thing that stops you from hacking your mind, something that I have studied now for over 35 years, the biggest thing that stops you from hacking your own mind is buying into the bull. I don't think you're allowed to say that next word on Facebook. It's buying into the crap that's out there where they tell you that you can't do this, you can't do that. It's not possible to do any of those things. Here's the deal, you guys. If one other person can do it, so can you. That's a concept in neuro-linguistic programming that is fundamental to the teachings. I think it transcends neuro-linguistic programming. I think a lot of people know this deep down inside, that if one other person can do it, so can you. There is no difference between them and you. If they've been able to achieve something, so can you. I can find someone from almost every walk of life that is able to achieve incredible results. One of my clients, let me slow down for a minute. I'm real fired up today. Aloha, Aditi, and Jasmine. So good to see you here too. And Arjel's on here. Of course, Arjel's on here. Hey, look, you guys. One of my clients, I didn't get permission to mention her name. She's an incredible woman, came from India, was told basically by her dad that if you want to have an incredible life, make sure that you meet the right man and get married. I mean, that's not bad, good, just his way of thinking, very old school. From India, if you want to have a good life, he says to his daughter, make sure you meet the right man. She's like, well, I want more than that. Moves here to the U.S., comes here to the U.S., an immigrant, English as a second language, and begins to work for a company, has a degree, tech industry, and then says, you know what, I want to quit. I want to quit this tech industry and I want to go do my own thing. Of course, what does everyone say to her? You can't do it. You're a woman. You're an immigrant. There's no way you're going to be successful. So she sets out on her own, opens up her own company, one person, solo. That was a couple decades ago. She was just listed as I think she's in the top 10 of 100 most powerful women that are out there, game changers. And you know what, something she said to me in a recent coaching call? It was pretty powerful. I'm translating it. I'm putting it into my own words. But here's what I basically heard from her. She's gotten up and talked in front of the United Nations. She gets up and she talks to immigrants all the time. And what I basically heard her say is that people that come from other countries and come here to the US have an easier time at being successful because they don't buy in to the limitations that a lot of people that were born here buy into or get caught up in all of the crap that's going on. They come here and they go, look at all of this opportunity here. I want to live a happy, beautiful life. And they have that ability to do it. She gets up and she says, I think we got better chances. So many people move here and they think, oh, I can't make it here. She went in with a different mindset. She hacked her own mind and refused to buy in to everyone else's limitations. You guys got to get over the fact that other people have told you stuff. If one person can become successful, you can totally become successful. Joy, so good to see you on here. By the way, for any of you that are in any groups that you want to get this message out there, share this. Put this out there and share this information as much as you can, because I just want to give people hope that you can actually hack your own mind, not other people's minds. Hack your own mind. So here's the deal. Here's what I want you guys to think about. How do you begin to hack your mind? First of all, you need to begin to learn your own mind. So here's where I want to give you some really clear content. People get caught up in their patterns, right? I think it's Aristotle that said we are what we repeatedly do. So yeah, if you eat crappy food all the time, you're going to have a physical body that is not going to be in the best shape. If you eat great food, if you eat healthy food, you're going to have a physical body that's in good shape. You exercise, you're going to have a different physiological response. So we know at the deep level that we are what we repeatedly do. So we're patterns. As a doctor of psychology, I can tell you that there's been a lot of research that looks at our patterns becoming unconscious, how we continuously do the same thing over and over again, and pretty soon it kind of goes on autopilot. Rather than thinking about doing something, your unconscious mind kicks in and you just begin to do it. Like you wake up in the morning and you have your routine. At some point you had to establish that routine. So we're just a series of patterns that we run. Neuro-linguistic programming is sometimes referred to as a pattern interrupt. The guy who invented it, Richard Bandler, I studied with him when I was 15. Ooh, that was 32 years ago. I studied with him when I was 15 years old. He referred to NLP as a pattern interrupt because at the core of the teachings of neuro-linguistic programming, you're looking for this pattern that a person's running. Now, overall, if you're living your life and you're happy, like Lisa just said over here, if you're living your life and you're happy and you're running a pattern that creates happiness, that creates joy, then that's a good pattern. We're not talking about hacking those. We're talking about hacking the patterns that derail you guys. The patterns that pull you away from achieving what you really want to achieve. And over all of these years that I've been teaching, I think it boils down to one thing. We want to be happy. You want to be happy in your career. You want to be happy in your health and fitness, in your relationship. And yet we run these patterns that are the opposite of what we should be doing to achieve happiness in our life. I did. I went from being a varsity athlete in high school and I became obese. Even knowing all of these techniques, I have been face down on the path, wondering what the hell did I do in order to deserve being at this low point in my life. I've been there, you guys. Doesn't matter if you learn this stuff at an early age, you got to practice these things. And I found myself running a pattern over and over again, and that was eating unhealthy food, and that was doing things that led to being unhealthy. And these patterns would just run. If this was live, well, I mean, it is live, but if you guys were sitting here in front of me, I'd look out at the room and go, how many of you eat something and as you're shoveling it in your mouth, you're sitting there going, I shouldn't eat this, and then you take the next bite? Or you deep down inside know, I shouldn't be going into this job, I shouldn't be going into this career, I'm miserable, and yet you go in and you do it. You go and keep doing the same thing over and over again. So what I want to teach you guys today is called pattern recognition so that you can begin to hack your own mind. Before you can even get into hacking your mind, you got to be able to find what it is that you need to hack. So here's how pattern recognition works. You wake up one day and you look back at the previous year and you go, whew, last year, man, I was a real jerk. And you sit there and you go, oh, that could have been, I could have been better. I could have done a better job. I could have been better, whatever. Then one day you wake up and you're at the end of running a pattern. You're right at the tail end of running a pattern. And you go, wow, I was just a real jerk. You still haven't really found the pattern yet, right? Then what happens is one day you wake up and you're right in the middle of running a pattern that you know you should get rid of. And you wake up in the middle of it and you go, wow, I'm being a real jerk. But you keep doing it anyway. You keep eating the pie. You keep going into the job. At least now you're awake, you guys. Then one day you wake up and you go, I'm about to go down a path that I don't want to go down. I'm about to say something negative to my partner. I'm about to blow up at my kids. I'm about to eat some crappy food. We beat ourselves up in those moments. And I think actually you should celebrate those moments. I want you to stop and think about this for a moment. You should actually celebrate that moment, not because you're about to eat that whole pie like I used to, not because you're about to yell at your kids. You should celebrate it because you have awareness. You are farther ahead than most of the people that are out there because most people don't even have an awareness of the patterns that they run. They're aware of this finger and they're willing to point it at other people rather than take responsibility for themselves. Pattern awareness takes courage. Pattern awareness takes responsibility because you wake up and you sit there and you go, I am about to lose it. And you do anyway. At least you should celebrate the fact that you notice it. Because the next morning you wake up and you sit there and you go, this is something that I do a lot. This is something that I do over and over again. This is something that I do in my job. This is something that I do with my health. Wait a minute, maybe this is about me, right? All change begins with who? Or is it whom? I don't know. I'm a doctor of psychology, not English. All change has to begin with you. You got to start with you. And when you recognize your pattern and you understand that this is a pattern that I run and that I have been running this pattern, you be grateful for that. And then you ask yourself, now how do I break this pattern, right? Now that you have awareness of the pattern, now that you are clear that you're running the pattern, the next thing you want to do is you want to break that pattern. So what does it take? Okay, if it's baggage, next week I'll talk about baggage. I'll talk about mental and emotional release. I'm going to do a webinar on Monday. For those of you that want to sign up for it, just find the link on our Facebook page. Sign up. I'll talk about baggage because sometimes the pattern is negative emotions, right? You're angry. You're pissed off. You're guilty about what happened before. You got to get rid of that baggage to break the pattern. For those of you who have done practitioner with me, sometimes the pattern is just a behavior. We'll do a swish pattern. Or maybe your state, your emotions are going down. Do an anchor. Those of you who did NLP, remember the anchoring? If you don't know what an anchor is, go on my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and just type in Dr. Matt James. And one of the webinars on there is how do you do anchoring? It'll teach you how to do it. It's free. Learn how to control your state. Yeah, sometimes your pattern is your mind going down a negative path. And then you need to do some reframing. You got to switch your perspective on something. First, though, you got to recognize the pattern. You have to recognize the pattern, celebrate that you found the pattern, and then ask yourself, what is it that will interrupt this pattern, that will break the pattern at the point where it goes wrong so that I can begin to create a new pattern, so that I can begin to create something new in my life. And that's what all of us have to do. I have to do it. You have to do it. If you're willing to take that step and have the courage to do it. Because look, again, I'm going to point out, facing yourself and realizing that these patterns that you're running are you and not anyone else, it takes courage. You got to be able to step up to that and be able to sit there and go, this is all about me. And then I now have the ability to see that this is something that I'm doing. How can I begin to gain a deeper level of control over it to begin to take back control of my life? You can't hack your mind unless you know what it is that you got to hack, right? You can't go in there and just think happy thoughts if that's not what the problem is. The webinars that I did last week were all on Ho'oponopono. Get my book, because sometimes your patterns are about forgiveness. Whatever it is, you find that pattern, you break it, and you're free of it. So many amazing shout outs on here. Thank you all so much. Juliet, Aditi, and Joe, I saw you on there. Joy, love you too, man. Thank you so much. So here's what I want to do. Cool. 15 minutes on the dot. I just wanted to give you guys some powerful information and take any questions you guys have. Any questions you have about patterns, anything you want to know, spend about 5-10 minutes taking questions. Lisa says, my pattern is incongruency. All the pattern is about incongruency. I'm going to need a little bit more information, Lisa, if we can just have a little bit of dialogue real quick. Is it incongruency, like you're doing the opposite of what you know you should be doing? Or is it incongruency as in you say one thing, do another? Or is the answer just straight up yes? And while I'm waiting for Lisa to answer, tomorrow, really cool. See this coming week. I know Master Prac starts next week. Talk about getting rid of some patterns. We're going to be running our fall Master Practitioner training, and we're going to be busting through some massive patterns there. 2 weeks of delving into NLP. I've been teaching those since the late 90s, so it's going to be super cool. Norman, can you use Huna energy for a pattern interrupt? Norman, so good to see you on here. Yeah, you just did Huna. Absolutely. And again, Norman, you're going to want to look at what is the thing that's causing the pattern. So pattern awareness is you want to learn what is it that's causing the pattern. So for example, Norman, if you're angry and your anger that you're holding on to causes you to blow up and talk to your kids in a way that you know you shouldn't. You know, I got an 18-year-old and I have an 11-year-old. And as a parent, sometimes we say things that we don't mean. Well, are we doing it because of anger? Anger because of what we went through? Is it we need to forgive our parents for what they put us through? Do we need to shift our thinking about it? So Norman, you can use Huna energy, just straight up energy work. For example, what you learned at the first level of Huna, how to bring in some energy work and just dissolve that baggage. Sometimes the pattern is incongruency. And I see, Lisa, you say, I take an action, say in business, but never follow through. So here's what I would suggest. Number one, a lot of times when it's lack of follow through, it could either be because of negative emotions. So next week I'll talk about negative emotions. I'll do a 1-hour-long webinar, talk about baggage that creates negative patterns. The second possibility is that it could be a state. So there's a thing in NLP called a chaining anchors that gets you out of procrastination and into a state of motivation. It's a hack that allows you to move from one state to another into a state of motivation. You know, I started teaching this stuff back in the 90s, and I've helped tens of thousands of people with this stuff. And so it's pretty easy to hack your mind with that and be able to shift your state. If it is a negative emotion, we'll talk about negative emotions next week. And if it has to do with forgiveness, check out my webinars from last week so that you can kind of see what you can do from a Ho'oponopono perspective. Juliet, I'm just scrolling back up. Oh, Anna, so cool that you're going to be there next week. That's awesome. I look forward to seeing you. That's next week, Thursday. It's like 1 week from today, I think. Is it 1 week from today? Yeah, that sounds about right. Juliet, when I do something with my partner and they get upset, I rewrite history and say that that's not what I meant and rephrase then grr. I think I get what you're saying. Juliet, that can work. That can absolutely work. That's called reframing. And if it's a pattern that you're running that's a negative pattern, meaning that in your mind you rephrase it to try to avoid dealing with forgiveness, that you said something to someone else, it may just be easier to say to that person, please forgive me, out loud. I know I taught you guys Ho'oponopono and I shared that in my book that just came out last week. Sometimes forgiveness just comes from your mouth. Look, one time I was in Italy, and my son said something to me, and I reacted in a way that was a little bit more intense than I probably needed to. And I could see by the look on his face that I had kind of gone overboard. In Hawaiian, it's called a heva. Heva is to go overboard, and I just kind of went a little bit overboard. And the next morning when I woke up, I looked at him and I said, hey, Ethan, last night I went a little bit overboard. Please forgive me. And he said, yeah, I forgive you, Dad. I've gone overboard too, and you've forgiven me. And we had a really good hug. And I said, now we need to have a discussion because what you said, it's not really cool. I'm your dad. You can't talk to me that way. Let's talk about how we should have communication with each other now that we've gained that level of forgiveness. And I held up a boundary. I held up a boundary and said, this doesn't work for me. Should probably do a whole webinar on boundaries. I think you guys would like that. Sometimes you got to do that. I cleaned it up with a little bit of forgiveness, face to face, and then I shared with him that here's how we should interact as father and son. It's okay for you guys to have boundaries. It is okay for you to say, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. That's totally acceptable. Greg, your book, Find Your Purpose, Master Your Path, is awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. I really do appreciate that. Hey, for all of you who got my book, the Shadow book, Find Your Purpose, Master Your Path, or even my new book on Ho'oponopono, go to Amazon and write a review. Put a review on there for me. Juliet, I end up saying what I know they need to hear. I think that's a positive thing. Juliet, I think that's a positive thing, like how I did it with my son. But if you're not expressing, let me just also throw out there, if you're not expressing what's truly in your heart, then you may be hurting yourself. And the pattern is that you're not putting your needs out there. My fiance, Trish Thorpe, who co-authored a book that we have coming out pretty soon, be able to talk about that in just a little bit. She talks to people about conscious communication and dealing with your emotions in the moment. And one of the things that you have to be willing to do is put your heart out there and say, hey, this is what's right and this is what isn't right. And we all get to decide that. In a relationship with your partner, with your kids. I know if you work for a company, the company gets to dictate a lot about what you do, and still, you're only going to allow happen to you what you allow to happen. To put it in plain English, it's more of a Hawaiian saying. To put it in plain English, whatever boundaries you choose to put up or choose not to put up, that is how the universe is going to treat you. And if you don't put a boundary up, people are going to run all over them. So you have to be willing to put up positive boundaries. Kwaku, so good to see you here. You were just at the prac in, was it the Empowering Your Life? You were either at the prac in San Diego or the Empowering Your Life. Anyway, I remember you. That's so cool. Fra, what do you think about people that lie to themselves? Yeah. Fra, that's a tough one. Not tough as in hard to answer. It's a tough one for people to deal with, right? Because if you're already lying to yourself, then your pattern has gone pretty deep. I did. I lied to myself about my health. I avoided looking in the mirror. I would wear super baggy clothes and I wouldn't walk around naked. I mean, I'm being transparent with you guys. I got to a state of obesity and didn't want to even face my own body. Isn't that crazy? We go through things where we lie to ourselves and we act like everything's okay. And I've been through things in my life. I went through a split up, my marriage of 14 years, and I had to wake up one day and stop lying to myself that somehow staying together was better for the kids, that somehow staying in a crappy job, I was working with a client, staying in a crappy job, well, at least I'm paying the bills. You won't be paying the bills if you're dying inside. And that's true in anything, right? I mean, come on, how many of you guys have ever been in a relationship where you just know that there's no energy left? Or a job where you know that there's no energy left in that job? You have to stop lying to yourself, and that's where you got to begin with you. You got to stop thinking that what you're doing is better. And what is it that you want to be 5, 10 years from now? One good way to kind of shift your perspective on a problem is fast forward 5 or 10 years in the future and look back to now and ask yourself, what would you tell the you now? Right? So I want you guys to all stop. I know this is live and I probably shouldn't stop talking, but just stop for a moment and just, what would you tell the person 5 or 10 years ago to do? I remember when I was obese, I would have told the 5-year younger version of me, work out, stop eating the crappy food. I have clients that say, I'd tell myself 5 years ago, get out of that job, get out of that relationship, hug your kid a little bit more. Live life. I've never heard anyone complain about following their heart. I've never heard anyone say, I followed my heart, I lived my life to the fullest. What a bummer. I've never heard anyone complain about following their heart, right? When you follow your heart, you live a fulfilled life. And so the first thing you have to do, Fra, which I think would help, is go 5 years out in the future, look back at now, and what would you tell yourself? Just close your eyes. 5 years out in the future, look back at yourself. What would you say to yourself now? If that's too hard to do, tell yourself 5 years ago what you should be doing today, and then stop waiting to do it. Look at the pattern and begin to move. Sorry, I keep moving back into the camera. I got to scroll up to look at the pictures. Jill, thank you for being on here. What's your best advice for handling how I still let others knock me off my center? I'm caught off guard by the side swipes from people who are upset because I won't engage in complaining, and instead, it trails off and it doesn't say what the rest of it is. I'm not sure what you do instead, Jill, but it sounds like that's a healthy pattern. Jill, I want to kind of help think outside of the box a little bit here. You said you get knocked off your center by other people around. You get caught off guard by the side swipes from people who are upset because they won't engage in complaining and blaming, and because you won't engage in complaining. I think that's a great pattern. One of my close friends, Sally Bishop. One of my close friends, Sally Bishop, she taught at Huna for a number of years. Beautiful woman, absolutely amazing light. She had friends that she would hang out with, and these friends would say negative things about other people. And she would sit there and take it because she thought, they're my friend and I want to be their friend. And one day she woke up and she realized that it's affecting her. And she said to the people while sitting at a dinner table, you guys need to stop talking about this. And they're like, why? This is what we want to talk about. We want to talk about how bad this other person is, how negative they are. And Sally said, I can't participate in this anymore. I teach my daughter, Jill, the 5 people you choose to hang out with, you begin to emulate them and take on their energy. There was a study done with heart cells. Take 20 people and pull a heart cell out of each of them. Whoever has the strongest energy around their heart cell, because the heart puts out so much more energy than the rest of the body. They're able to measure it going out dozens of feet in front of you. The energy wave that comes out of your heart, it's a huge center for you. You guys all know that I love energy, right? So this heart cell, you take a heart cell out, put it in a petri dish. Whoever has the strongest energy field, the other heart cells, when you first put them in the petri dish, they're beating at their own tempo. But whichever heart cell has the strongest energy field, the other heart cells start beating at their beat, meaning it takes over. It influences all of them. I taught this to my kids, and I said to them, when you're on recess, when you're hanging out on the weekend, whoever you're around, you're letting their energy field into your space, and it's dictating how you feel at the deeper level. So Jill, man, that might be a boundary issue. If you're around people that are negative all the time, talk to them. That you want to either A, be positive, or B, find people that do. Sorry, Jill. Just like to keep it real. Paula, can you have some success with pattern interrupt for, say, 6 months and then have the old behavior return? Paula, that is possible. And good to see you, Paula, by the way. That is possible. You can absolutely go back to an old pattern that you run. So remember, 2 things affect your cells first and foremost. This is according to Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief. Really cool shout out to Dr. Bruce Lipton, who used to be a faculty member at the university that I ran. Great guy. You guys should all read Biology of Belief if you haven't. 2 things affect your cells first and foremost: energy and environment. Environment includes your friends. It includes the physical space that you live in, and it includes the people, places, and things that you put around you. Energy is you. Energy is your heart, your higher self, your mind. Your mind is just energy. Your emotions are trapped energy. Tris talks about how emotions are energy in motion, emotion. And so energy and environment affect your cells first and foremost. So we can, with NLP, switch something in our heads, which you know about, Paula. You've been to these trainings. You can switch something in your head, shift your energy. If you go back into the crappy environment, though, and your pattern interrupt is that you need to get out of that environment, then you're dealing with the external. I teach people how to shift things up here, how to shift things in their gut, in their heart, with their energy. And you guys all know me. I still talk about taking action, and the reason why is this external environment that we have, it does affect us. Who you put yourself around, who you hang out with. Do you watch the news? I got a TV up here. I'm not gonna lie, there's a TV in my house, right? I'm gonna tell you guys the truth. I got a TV, but it's not hooked up to any cable. It's hooked up to an Apple TV. And so we use Netflix every once in a while. I watch Zero News. There's no cable. Hope you guys don't get too dizzy. There's the cable connector right there on the floor. There's nothing coming out of it. There's no cable box because I don't want cable in here because the news is someone else's negative opinion of the world, which is sensationalized just so they can sell more chips. I mean, okay, probably more than chips, but you guys get my point. One of my students was like, oh my God, if I stop watching the news, what happens if something happens? Don't worry, someone will tell you. I absolutely am positive that someone will tell you, and then you'll wish they hadn't. I choose where I read my news, and that TV is just for movie night, hanging out with my woman, and for the most part, we don't bother watching that thing because it doesn't help us in our relationship. You got to sometimes even enforce your boundaries with that beautiful thing up there called a television. Jason, Dr. Matt, will you ever have Master Prac in the Northeast? Jason, check out our website, empowermentpartnership.com. We're doing week 1 Master Prac in Boston next year. Jason, look at you. You are a manifestation magnet, my man. First time back on the East Coast since 2006. We're going to be on the East Coast in Boston. Pretty sure that's the Northeast. It's not Canada if that's where you're from. And Northeast, you got your wish. Couple more quick questions. I've been going for 30 minutes, but I'm having fun with you guys. Mary Ann McMurphy Barrington. My pattern, Mary Ann, so cool to see you. My pattern is to take on too much and then feel overwhelmed. How do I do a pattern interrupt for this? This is something that I've worked with a couple of my clients, Mary Ann. First of all, next week we're talking about letting go of negative emotions. With a lot of people that I have worked with, taking on too much has to do with guilt. Patterns from the past of not taking on enough and feeling guilty. So I'm always going to say the first thing you want to do is you want to get rid of any guilt. The second thing that you want to do is you want to be aware of your limitations. You want to be aware of your limitations, and in your mind, realize that if you take on too much and fail to do it, you actually disappoint people more than if you say, I can't handle it. Marianne, let me just pretend for a moment that there's another billion questions on here, which I'm scrolling. Yeah, there's a lot. I haven't gotten to everyone's question. I'm just going to straight up own it and look at them and go, I've already been going 30 minutes. I told you guys this would only be a 30-minute Facebook Live. And so I don't want to hang on to you guys for too long. And so I'll sign off, but look at questions later on and see if there's any we can answer next week or whatnot. That's just me being straight up, being transparent. People would rather have that than me saying, I'm going to stay on here and answer every single question you have and then fail to do it. So I choose truthfulness and transparency over acting like I can handle everything. And I teach NLP. I teach people Huna. I carry a lot. I teach a lot of people, and I've had some of my students go, you carry on a huge burden for a lot of people. I said, I also know my limitations though. I'm not Superman. I know my limitations. And I know when to say, hey, I'm at my limitation right now and I can't handle anymore. I teach my students to do the same thing. So Marianne, after letting go of guilt from the past, in the future, begin to ask yourself, what would be more empowering for me and other people to share with them? Thank you so much for thinking that I can handle that, and I actually am not able to handle that much more. Maybe next week I can, or the week after that, or how can I help empower you to handle it? And that way it empowers them and they hear truthfulness from you. And you might be surprised. When I've done that, I've had students say to me, can I help you out? Is there anything that I can do to help you out? And it's so neat to hear that people want to reach out and help out. I think we all want to help each other. Awesome. All right, I've been going for about 35 minutes. Anita's like, boundary sounds good. Aviva, very cool. Webinars on boundaries. I'm hearing a lot about webinars on boundaries. And Christy speaking the truth that you love it. Awesome. You know what? I know a lot of these on here are thank yous. And Andoni, I'm going to do my best to look at the list of questions. And Andoni, I know you got a pattern on here and we ran over, and I like to be respectful of people's time boundaries. So thank you all so much. I'm going to join you guys next week for a webinar on Monday. Check it out. I'm going to be on, I think it's a 1-hour webinar on mental and emotional release, letting go of baggage as a boundary, not as a boundary, as a pattern. And next week on either Wednesday or Thursday, I think I'm also doing another Facebook Live. So I'm going to start to do these a little bit more regularly so that you guys have opportunity to ask me questions. Okay? Thank you all so much. Oh hui ho. Class dismissed. Love you all.